Tensions continue to rise in East Asia and in the Pacific. The Philippines logs 203 Chinese vessels near its shores, highest ever weekly count. Between August 27th and September 2nd, the Philippines logged 203 Chinese maritime militia vessels, an unprecedented surge that intensifies concerns centered around the Sabina Shoal. Analysts describe the increased Chinese maritime activity, which was logged by the Philippine Navy in the country's exclusive economic zone, as a critical development, consistent with Beijing's long-standing strategy of swarming in contested waters. The number of Chinese vessels was similar to what we've seen on other occasions, said one analyst, reflecting patterns observed by the Balakadan joint military exercises conducted with U.S. forces in April. So here is the Scarborough Shoal, the Spratly Islands, the Philippines, China, Taiwan. We see further expansion from China in this area, claiming it as part of what I believe they're referring to as their nine-dash line initiative, which says China owns territorial control of these areas, which is being contested by the West. So if we look here at that area, we have an alliance between South Korea and Japan, Taiwan, the Philippines, and the U.S. supporting from abroad, and Australia from the south. And we see this is the area that's contested. If I was China, well, targeting Taiwan would be terrible. They have a lot of contained firepower here, very close, and it could be very devastating to your population if they retaliate. The same with South Korea, although if South Korea attacked, you could guarantee, let's say with high probability, North Korea would attack South Korea, Japan would enter the war, and this whole place would devolve into a very ugly scenario. So by China exerting force down here in the Philippines, which has a very weak military, the threat is significantly mitigated than if it puts pressure in these areas. And when I say that the risk is significantly mitigated, I mean of all-out war. Because if there was a significant conflict between these three countries and China, then yes, that would devolve into an all-out, very, very prolific war. So it's very strategic that China is putting pressure here in this area and trying to exert force. This is also where a significant amount of shipping in the world travels through here, and often down around the South African coast now, that there's a significant threat to shipping going through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait because of the Houthis. So shipping has largely rerouted down around here, but nonetheless, still coming up through here, through I believe this is the Strait of Malacca. Yeah, the Malacca Strait, through here, and up through the South China Sea. So we see growing pressures here on this potential battlefront, and growing pressures here on the western battlefront. I think it's only a matter of time between the pressures grow to a point where you have a earthquake of sorts, if you get what I'm saying. It's like the tectonic plates, right? Here's the Pacific plate. There's pressures that build, and occasionally they slip violently and you get massive earthquakes. And sometimes they slip slowly and not so violently and you get smaller earthquakes. As more tension builds up without a release of pressure, you're more likely to get a very large earthquake. And so you're seeing the pressure intensifying, and the likelihood of having a massive slip or big earthquake grows exponentially. Likewise over here. Between countries, you see pressure developing on multiple fronts. And it's only a matter of time before you have a massive earthquake. Now, some of that pressure is being released in this war between Ukraine and Russia. There is some pressure being released. But likewise, you see more pressure being added in to the conflict by both sides. And so although there is a blow-off valve of sorts to release some pressure, you see more pressure being added in intermittently while that blow-off valve is shut. Both fronts seem to be developing very rapidly. And behind the scenes, you have an economic alliance happening with BRICS countries around the world, and even involvement between BRICS countries and non-BRICS countries that are also not involved in the G7 or in the EU or in the SWIFT system forming as well. A lot of pressure building up around the world. North Korea's Kim Jong-un vows to exponentially boost nuclear arsenal. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un said that the country is now implementing a nuclear force construction policy to increase the number of nuclear weapons exponentially. So we see pressure increasing here in North Korea, while you see South Korea having absolutely abysmal birth rates, population replacement. And an event that happened today, North Korean People's Army fired a missile towards the Sea of Japan, which is interesting because supposedly there's large exercises happening with Russia and China in this general geographical area right now. And the Japanese Prime Minister's office confirmed that multiple North Korean missiles were launched. From China, they say, "We hope that the South China Sea will remain a sea of peace. But if the United States moves itself or its pawn, Philippines, to the front line, then we, the Chinese military, will resolutely crush any hostile encroachment on China's sovereign territory," the 9-dash line. And that comes from He Lei, Chinese Army Lieutenant General, referring to the possible joint U.S.-Philippine operations to supply Philippine vessels in the Sabina and Second Thomas Shoals. The quote continues, "We in the Chinese military do not have patience," which is not, I believe that's the opposite of what they actually have. They seem to be planning out some long-term plan here. The U.S. military warns Beijing against dangerous South China Sea moves in talks. A senior U.S. military official warned his Chinese counterpart against Beijing's dangerous moves in the South China Sea during the first talks of their kind between the commanders. Washington and Beijing remain at odds on issues from trade to the status of self-ruled Taiwan and China's increasingly assertive approach in disputed maritime regions. But they have sought to reestablish regular military-to-military talks in a bid to prevent flashpoint disputes from spinning out of control. Just what I was talking about, a flashpoint. That large earthquake from happening that has several aftershocks. Samuel Papero, commander of U.S. Indo-Pacific Command, and Wu Yanan, head of the Chinese Army's Southern Theater Command, talked via video call on Tuesday, China time. Papero underscored the importance of sustained lines of communication between the U.S. military and the PLA, a statement from his command said. And I went over this in previous videos, talking about how it seems that lines of communication are being cut off when people no longer believe that the word, either spoken or written, has any power. They start acting kinetically, with physical action. Well, that's all I have for this video. Until next time, stay exponentially aware.